Hello, welcome to the Demi Tastes podcast, which is going to be the new branding that we're adopting for interviews and so on. And for those of you who are familiar, who've been watching us for a while, we also have this other branding, which we've been calling the Whiskey Lodge Cast, which I just put up there in the corner. And the intention for that branding is that's when people from the Whiskey Lodge are getting together and talking about stuff that concerns us in the Whiskey Lodge as casual consumers of whiskey and people who participate in Dry Week and talk about other things like our cheese episode today. So today is definitely going to be a Whiskey Lodge episode, but I just wanted to put this icon that we've been working on back up on screen. This is kind of a rough draft. We have a member of the Whiskey Lodge who's helped me turn a concept into a rough draft reality there. And we're going to try that for a little bit and see if we need to make it better. If you have any thoughts or feedback about that icon, I'd appreciate it. The idea behind the icon is it's a Demitas, the espresso cup, which is what my name is based on, and the other half of it is a Glencairn, and they kind of fade together in the middle in sort of a cool new agey outline design. Thought it was pretty cool. If it's not distinctive enough, that would definitely be a problem. So let me know if you think that that's a little bit too generic looking, and we can work on that. So let's pop back on over to the Whiskey Lodge branding, and what we have for you today is Dry Week cheese episode. It's Dry Week. We got to do other stuff. We've been. I actually, my very first question was one of my favorite cheeses is actually aged in wine, and it does not feel like that is appropriate for Dry Week, even though, you can follow the rules to whatever degree you want. But as far as keeping the line, we're going to keep the wine aged cheese off of the stream and instead stick to the other great options that we have. So that's just how we do Dry Week. Try to support the community. Anybody who needs help, we pitch in, and or everybody just wants a palate reset every once in a while. I'll be honest with you. Sometimes Dry Week's coming around just as I'm getting used to the idea of I'm going to start writing reviews and do a whole bunch of stuff, and I have to kind of I have to take one for the team and say I'm going to take a step back and do other stuff for a week. So anyway, I'm joined today as usual by my co-host Spooky Chicken.
Hello there.
And he's going to actually be leading this episode in terms of information because Spooky has worked in the hospitality industry and knows a little thing or two about putting together a cheese board.
Indeed. One might say that I do. I come here having been injured in the line of duty. Upon getting ready for the podcast, I had to jump over a fence, and I believe have sprained my ankle very mildly. So what are you drinking today, Doug? Now that we're not drinking whiskey.
If I'd had time, I would have tried to make myself a pumpkin spice latte or something along those lines. But 4 o'clock rolled around and I hadn't yet made any espresso, and I was like, I need to focus on the cheese part. So I just made myself a regular old cup of black tea.
Wonderful. I was walking out to get a little fancy chai latte from a place about 2 blocks down from my house. Stepped out of the door, realized I had locked myself outside, jumped over the fence to go grab my keys, and then felt I was in pain a little bit, so I decided that I deserved a little treat. So I got one of those chai frappes, which I guess is just like a little chai smoothie of some sort.
Okay. So your corner store version of Frappuccino, I guess, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Dessert tea in this case. Nice.
Indeed.
All right. So for sheer entertainment value today, we decided that somehow thinking about cheese got us thinking about autumn drinks, or maybe it's just the season. But we were thinking a lot about pumpkin spice latte and the like, and we decided that one thing led to another, and we decided that poetry would be appropriate for today's episode. So let's see, Ian, should we start with the tongue twister poem or should we start with the haiku?
Well, the haikus are not only very short, they're also not, or at least the one that I made was not very good. So,
all right. Well, you have more than one.
No, I only have the one haiku myself.
All right. So, okay, I'll start then with So again, 4 o'clock rolled around and I realized I hadn't actually turned my ideas for a poem into a poem. So I did what any good person with a subscription to ChatGPT would do. And I put my ideas into ChatGPT and I said, make me a poem. So
I'm
This will
fascinated by
be
what's going to come out of this.
this will be, I think, the first time the Whiskey Lodge has made use of any kind of AI for content. And with all the disclaimers out of the way that this may not be good, I read it to make sure that it wasn't, inappropriate or laughably bad. But I'm going to try my best to deliver it in a poetic way, I suppose. Should I try to put this on screen, or is that
Oh, sure, maybe.
that might take me too long? I don't really have a plan set up for that. Can I? I wonder if I can. No, that's not going to be quick. So never mind about that. But I do want to get this ready. Okay. So here is a poem about pumpkin spice latte where got some noise going on over there.
Sorry, my
Okay.
desk is very full. I didn't realize that was getting picked up.
Okay, let's how do we get into this? Okay, so I had this idea that I wanted to write a poem. I'm personally not that big of a fan of pumpkin spice latte. I like that there's been a bit of a shift to other flavors, and that was kind of I wanted to have a little bit of like acknowledge that pumpkin spice lattes exist, but sort of talk about the other flavors. And ChatGPT did not respond necessarily to that constraint. So it's really more of a love poem to pumpkin spice latte, which is not what I would have written. Um, but I did have this idea that I wanted to bookend this poem by talking about how pumpkin spice sort of precedes the autumn, and then end the poem with a phrase like beckons the fall, with the double entendre built into that fall not being either autumn or like a fall of a civilization or something like that. So that's kind of what I was going for. I didn't get that at all out of this poem. So, for better or worse, this is what ChatGPT came up with some of that information. Okay. In the twilight of summer's tender embrace, as leaves hold secrets in a green hiding place, there's a whisper, a scent, a tale to be told of a flavor that heralds a season of gold. A symphony of spices in a ceramic cup. A pumpkin spice latte waking spirits up. With cinnamon's dance and cloves' warm embrace, it's the elixir that conjures autumn's sweet grace. Steam rising like mist from a harvest morn. The aroma a promise of colors reborn. Ginger and nutmeg in harmony and thrall. As we sip from the cup, we heed the fall's call. Golden leaves flutter like whispers of dawn, autumn's arrival, the great pumpkins spawn. The world dressed in amber, red, and maroon, beneath the harvest moon's enchanting tune. Pumpkin spice latte, you're more than a taste, you're a ritual, a memory, an autumnal embrace. In each fragrant sip, you're the season's thrall, a sip of heaven that beckons the fall.
I love it when the pumpkins swim upstream to spawn every fall. It was really good, except for that one line. That was a really weird line, quite honestly.
Yeah. So, yeah, ChatGPT probably needs a couple of iterations and some editing to make something that you'd really be proud of. But, you know, I did my best on the delivery. Let's put it that way.
Indeed, that was quite nice.
All right. Up next, you have a little haiku for us. So you
I have
had
a little
the
haiku.
easier job in theory.
A much easier job. This haiku doesn't have very much of a backstory. I'm a little bit angry every year down here in Arizona because we, at least down here in the desert, we don't have a fall or really a winter or really any seasons except for hot and less hot. So that's what this is about. It's more specifically about drinking chai this time of year. Let's see, where is this? Sip the spiced leaf juice in the 90-degree heat. Think about autumn.
Short and sweet.
Short and sweet.
Do you ever feel like a haiku, like sometimes it's just like getting the right number of syllables, but like a really good haiku has like some kind of a meter to it? Like it's kind of hard to describe because of that whole 575 constraint, but like It's really
I
good when it like just about lines up with the line, but maybe not exactly. There's like a comma halfway through the second line, and somehow it just works. I don't know if you know what I'm
yeah,
talking about.
I've heard them like I'm not really sure exactly what the rules for haikus are in a wider sense, because like you can actually find little haiku competitions on YouTube and things like that. They're very fascinating and they sound really cool. But the thing about them is that not all of the poems actually follow the syllable thing. There seems to be some degree of elasticity in that particular rule, but all of them have a very specific tone, and sometimes things stray a little bit too far from that tone or that meter. I'm afraid I don't particularly quite fully understand the meter, honestly. Um, in a haiku, so that's a thing unto itself.
Well, kudos for trying.
Thank you.
And you churned out that haiku like I felt like I'd barely asked the question. You're like, sure, here's a haiku. So I was like, yeah, that's okay. That's pretty good. Okay, let's see. This will be my first time sharing a screen on StreamYard. Let me see if I can figure out actually how this works. Yeah, share screen. Right? Window, this one. Share. How's that look?
Ooh.
Okay, so another thing that happened while we were talking about poetry is I just happened to come across this. Um, it's almost a meme to complain about English pronunciation. I believe this poem is called English is Tough Stuff, or that's just one of the things that has been written about this. And I won't do justice to the sort of history behind this poem. But the silly idea that we had here, before we get into talking about cheese, was that uh, we would trade off couplets of this poem, right? I don't
Yeah.
remember if you recall exactly what our plan was here, but my sort of thinking was, um, it would be too hard with latency to like trade off one word at a time, which would probably
No,
be
certainly
utterly
not one
hilarious.
word or even one line necessarily.
But I think a couplet might be the right unit, and then we trade off, and we're gonna do our best, having only looked up a few words and not really rehearsed at all, just to get like sort of a bearing on some words that we didn't know, but otherwise just trying to make it through reading and pronouncing this bizarre poem that sort of fakes you out with rhymes as you go. Oh, a little bit of background. This poem was written assuming UK pronunciation. So
Uh,
some of these rhymes will not necessarily work if you were to read it in American English, what you'd assume for American English, but that doesn't mean that we're necessarily going to read them one way or another. We'll just see what happens.
would you like to begin or shall I?
I don't know. Should we like rock paper scissors it or something? Because
Yeah, sure. Let's rock, paper, scissors it.
is that gonna work on stream?
I
Okay.
haven't the foggiest idea.
Okay.
All right.
Rock,
Rock, paper,
paper, scissors,
scissors,
shoot.
shoot.
Okay,
All
this
right, we
doesn't
both.
work with the latency. We still tied. Okay, no, let's not do this. No, okay, here's a better one. Odds or evens. So just show me one or two fingers and call odds or evens. You call it. Okay.
I wait.
So this is like we're gonna add up the number of fingers total, and if
Oh,
that number
okay.
is even and you called even, it's kind of like flipping a coin, but you don't have to have a coin.
So I just put up fingers where you can't see them, and then we both show them.
Right. And call it, you call it when you put up the fingers. Okay. So like, yeah, great.
So I'm about to throw up a certain amount of
Yeah. So like
fingers, and I
so
say
like
odds are even.
yeah. So we'll do like 1, 2, 3, and then you call odds or even, and then we show the fingers on screen, right?
Ah, got it. I see. Got it. All right.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, even.
All right,
Oh,
that's
hey,
even. So
that was
you get
even.
you get
Nice.
choice of first or second.
All right. I can go first, I think, then. We can do it that way.
Okay.
All right, let's begin. Dearest creature in creation, study English pronunciation. I will teach you in my verse sounds like corpse, core, horse, and worse. I will keep you, Susie, busy, make your head with heat grow dizzy. Tear and eye your dress will tear, so shall I, oh hear my prayer.
Just compare heart, beard, and herd, dies and diet, lord and word, sword and sward, retain and Britain, mind the latter how it's written. Now I surely will not plague you with such words as plague and ague. Plaque, that's plaque.
Oh, yeah.
But be careful how you speak. Say break and stake, but bleak and streak. Cloven, oven, how and low, script, receipt, show, poem, and toe.
Let's see. Hear me say, devoid of trickery, daughter, laughter, and terpsichore. I think that's how you pronounce that. Typhoid, measles, topsails, isles, exiles, similes, and reviles. Scholar, vicar, and cigar. Solar, mica, war, and far. One, anemone, balmoral, kitchen, lichen, laundry, laurel, Gertrude, German, wind, and mines. Scene, melpomene, and mankind. I
I think that's
actually don't know
another
that word.
muse. I think that's another muse. So capital letter,
Oh,
usually it's a Greek word, yeah. Um,
yeah.
billet does not rhyme with ballet. Bouquet, wallet, mallet, chalet. Blood and flood are not like food, nor is mold like should and would. This is the first one that definitely doesn't rhyme.
Yeah.
Viscous, viscount, load, and broad. Toward to forward to reward. And your pronunciation's okay when you correctly say croquet. Rounded, wounded, grieve, and sieve. Friend and fiend, alive and live.
Ivy, privy, famous, clamor, and enamor rhyme with hammer, river, rival, tomb, bomb, comb, doll, and roll, and sum, and home. Stranger does not rhyme with anger, neither does devour with clangor. Souls but foul, haunt but aunt, font, want, grand, and grant. Shoes, goes, does. Now first say finger, and then singer, ginger, linger, real, zeal, mauve, gauze, gouge, and gauge. Marriage, foliage, mirage, and age.
Query does not rhyme with very, nor does fury sound like berry. Dost, lost, post, and doth cloth loath. Job, knob, bosom, transom, oath. Though the differences seem little, we say actual but victual. Refer does not rhyme with defer. Pfeffer does, and zephyr, heifer. Mint, pint, senate, and sedate. Dull, bull, and George ate late. Scenic, Arabic, Pacific. Science, conscience, scientific.
Liberty, library, heave in heaven, Rachel, ache, mustache, 11. We say hallowed but allowed, people, leopard, toad but vowed. Mark the differences, moreover, between mover, cover, clover. Leeches, breeches, wise, precise, chalice but police and lice. Police and lice. Camel, constable, unstable, principal, disciple, label.
Petal, panel, and canal, wait, surprise, plat, promise, pal, worm and storm, chaise, chaos, chair, senator, spectator, mayor, tor but hour and succor for, gas, alas, and Arkansas. That's got to be one of
This
those
one made me
erotic
a bit
R things.
angry.
Yeah.
Because
C idea. Yeah.
for the original it should be gas, alas, and Arkansas or something like that. I don't know what the British are doing with this one.
Yeah, I don't know. Is there another version of this poem? That'd be funny to look at.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep going. C, idea, Korea, area. Psalm, Maria, but malaria. Youth, south, southern, cleanse and clean. Doctrine, turpentine, marine. And let me scroll down.
Ooh, ooh, ooh.
Okay.
Oh. Compare alien with Italian, dandelion and battalion. Sally with ally, yay, I, way, and key. I say aver, but ever, fever, neither, leisure, skein, deceiver, heron, granary, canary, crevice, and device and airy.
Base, but preface, not a face. Phlegm, phlegmatic, ass glass base. Large, but target. Gin, give, verging. Ought, out, joust, and scour, scourging. Ear, but earn, and wear, and tear. Do not rhyme with here, but air. 7 is right, but so is even. Hyphen, roughen, nephew Stephen. Monkey, donkey, Turk and jerk, ask, grasp, wasp, and cork and work. Yep.
Pronunciation, think of psyche. Is a paling stout and spiky? Won't it make you lose your wits writing groats and saying grits? It's a dark abyss or tunnel, strewn with stones, stowed Solace, Gunnel, Islington, and Isle of Wight, housewife verdict and indict.
Finally, which rhymes with enough? Though, through, plow, or dough, or cough. Hiccup has the sound of cup. My advice is to give up. And there's a credit here. The Chaos by Dr. Gerard Nolst Trinité of the Netherlands. And
Yeah, there's still
this is quite an old poem, so maybe that explains some of the strange rhyming.
yeah, the fact and because you wouldn't usually accept or expect a modern reader to know how to pronounce Gunnel.
Well, you know, I as a rower and paddler definitely
Yeah.
know. So
Yeah.
I would have said topsail instead of topsail, though.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, there was a few in here that I felt were a little bit surprising, and
With
like
my
some
pronunciation?
not necessarily, just like in general, like this I think is clever, where the punctuation and the meter are a little bit at odds, and I think
Mhm.
you did pretty much what I would do, which is to basically blow through that.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
totally.
and you know, if there was one thing in this that made me want to actually practice, and I stopped myself from doing so, it was this couplet right here. Just to like get the pacing right so that it feels good coming out and still feels like it has the meter.
Yeah, that's definitely fair.
And also that this line this line blah, where was this one? Uh, this one really strongly begs for wood to be pronounced a wood.
Wood. Yeah, I'm not really sure what's up with that. Or maybe food is supposed to be pronounced slightly differently?
Yeah, or maybe it's just an error on the part of the person who wrote the poem, or there was a dialectical accent difference that I'm not aware of
Who knows?
in the
Yeah.
in the 20s or whenever it was that this poem was written. Yeah, so the there were I think two muses in the poem, and this Balmoral is a castle.
Yeah.
Um,
Melpomene, I
I think it's
suppose.
I think it's Melpomene.
Melpomene. That is a wild pronunciation of a Greek word.
Is it?
Oh, yeah, totally. So if it was, oh gosh, I need to look up the actual Greek.
Yeah, I did see the Greek spelling of this, but I can't so much as say that that really helps me know how to pronounce it because Greek, like
Yeah,
English,
totally.
has sort of strange pronunciation rules for some of its letters, especially vowels.
She's the muse of tragedy. In ancient Greek, it would be Melpomene. Melpomene. Something along those lines.
It's Greek with an Italian accent.
Yeah, something like that.
Right. And then there's also like it's Greek-ish, but you still pronounce it the English way, right? Is one of the things.
Terpsichore. What is terpsichore? I actually
Terpsichore
don't
is
know.
another muse.
Okay,
So
maybe I just do
Melpomene
not
and
remember my
Terpsichore.
muses. Apparently,
It was one of those things where once I looked it up, I was like, oh yeah, okay, that was in Shakespeare at some point. Yeah. One thing that was
that would make
interesting,
sense.
some of these I want to I want to make these um I want to make all of the meter of all of these lines sort of line up in some way that makes sense. And like they don't all necessarily have the right number of syllables, even if you were to pronounce something different, or like cut out a syllable or you know some sort of common abbreviation in like UK English or whatever. Um, and I found that like in the couple of lines that I had read, I felt I had to like hold certain usually unstressed syllables. I would have to hold them longer to make it work.
Mm.
I don't do a whole lot of verbal reading of poetry. Right?
Fair enough.
This is like a I've just spent the last week like remembering high school English essentially. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Uh I got a kick out of this line because this is out of everything in this poem, this felt like the biggest head fake.
Oh yeah, totally.
So I think this is correctly pronounced Sally. Jeez, I just can't even
Yeah.
get through the
I
first
because there's
word.
two words in there, and I'm not even clear what those words are. But yeah,
Yeah, I had to. Some of these are just like you've seen it in
like A
Shakespeare,
Y
maybe.
and Y E. Like I probably should pronounce Y E ye maybe, but I'm not actually clear.
Yes, ye. I think as in like ye
Come
hear
all ye
ye.
faithful and whatnot.
Yes. So that's what that one is. So Sally with ally, yay as in yay or nay, right?
Yeah.
Yay, ye, I, way, and key.
So A Y is supposed to be another I. Then
I
got it.
believe so. I think it's just an alternate spelling of AYE,
Okay, fair enough then.
which ironically, AYE sounds like it rhymes with this stanza also.
Yeah.
Also, interesting that you pronounced this granary, which I think is actually correct, but for some reason I had it in my head that it's granary, just
Might
because
be
that's what it
granary,
is.
honestly. There's certain vocal quirks that we all have and things like that for one reason or another. And some words that I have just never heard a human being actually pronounce. I've only ever read them in books. Um, I have seen Skeyn written before. Never heard a human being pronounce it to me.
I had to look that up, and I honestly forgot what the pronunciation was because it looks like it should be
Oh yeah,
skeen or skin
yeah. It looks
even, but I think it's
skin. It might
skine.
like a water skin or something like that.
Hmm.
It's usually how it's used, so maybe that's it.
Yeah. Anyway, it's probably about time we move on from there.
Indeed,
uh, that was a bit of fun.
it
I don't know if that
was.
was nearly as funny as I thought it would be, but that's the problem with making live content sometimes.
Yeah, no, I mean, it probably would have been. We maybe we'll revisit it with. Hey there, Tig. How are you doing? Maybe we'll revisit it at the end of an episode wherein we drink sometime.
Oh yeah, that would do it, right? Like we
Yeah,
so okay, add to the checklist. Have Phil drink all of those vodka samples that he missed out on
all at the same time.
at all in the same sitting, and then read that poem.
Um,
Okay, all right. So
so that
I've got myself a little cheese board prepared. I'm ready to talk through it if that's how we want to go into the cheese segment.
absolutely. Do you have a little picture of it to pop up?
Oh, I could yes and no. Let's do this. Um, I do have a picture. It's on Instagram. And never hurts to do a little self promotion, I suppose. Um,
Indeed.
I've lost the. Uh-huh. Takes a little bit too many clicks to actually share screen on this app.
Ah. Oh, how wonderful. Ah, so you're the Kirkland Brie, is that it?
I do, yes. Kirkland is actually really good for putting together a charcuterie tray.
Oh, it
But
very much is.
I would say the more interesting part of this tray. So first of all, I've got dates on there. I love doing cheese crackers, dates, and honey, and sometimes I'll throw in some meats like salami, pepperoni if I happen to have those, which I didn't this time. But recently, there's been a bit of a trend of a particular friend of ours giving us honey gifts, and also
Ooh.
we've been getting ourselves like souvenir honeys. So we have no fewer than 6 or 7 different honeys available to us as of right now. And what I have on the plate there is there is this. Oh, I guess now I have to make my face bigger. So we have this.
Salish honey.
Yeah, we have the Salish honey from Washington State, which is this was just the Salish spa.
Mm.
which was where we went for our mini moon when we got married, and then we went on like we couldn't go on our honeymoon trip right away, so we went on a week went on a local weekend retreat. And so this has been around for a while, and it's unfortunately like really started to crystallize. We didn't open it until maybe 6 months ago, and we've been enjoying it with cheese like this.
Mm.
The darker honey that's in front of the cheese there. So the Salish is the one that's kind of in the back on the soup spoon.
Yeah.
The darker whipped honey
This one
that's in the
most
front.
interests me.
Yeah, this is a New Zealand honey, Manuka
Ooh,
honey called
Manuka.
Arataki, monofloral, and
Yeah.
MGO 100 plus, whatever that means. But this is like, uh, really, like I guess I don't know if it helps at all to like show in there, but like this is like a almost toffee like whipped honey. It's a very interesting texture.
By the way, hello, Dragon Few in the chat.
Yes, hello, Dragonfew.
Yeah. So Manuka is very interesting to me. I've always seen it very, very dark in color. When it's whipped, it appears to get a little bit brighter, but it got huge as a health food. Some years ago, I want to say, it got to be very, very expensive in certain situations, but especially the kind of raw style and things like that. I believe at Costco right now, there's a little bottle of it, about $30, I want to say, next to all the other honey that they have available.
Yeah, usually pretty expensive stuff. And this
Mm-hmm.
honey here, the really light golden yellow straw color honey, I have not tasted this yet, but this is Malona honey, and it was a gift from a friend who just got back from vacation. I don't really know the story here. Um, yeah, just the brand is Divine Cypress Delicacies. So I haven't tasted that one yet, and I will. I guess I should probably comment on the flavors of these things.
Indeed.
Oh,
So
we
it
can
seems
zoom
you've
in on
gone
our
for a very
faces too.
sweet, somewhat sweet cheese board right there.
Yeah, I have, and part of the thought behind the black tea that I have continued to let steep is that I wanted actually to get a really nice tannic ballast for that sweet and fat that I've got set up there. So in terms of the flavors of these, that Salish honey is just like it's a really good clover honey, basically. Like it's a really high
Mm,
quality like honey that you're used to how it tastes, but it's just like way better.
I
Um,
do enjoy that.
the Arataki Manuka honey is pretty wild. Put that back up so you can see the that sort of like it's got that whipped, like you can see that there's some, there's some like melted honey in there, and there's lots of air in there. But besides that, the flavor of it is like you wouldn't necessarily recognize that as honey right off the bat. It's very like it's almost like a floral toffee.
Mm,
I wouldn't quite say like, I guess it's manuka, right? But like it almost has a what's the purple one? Lavender. It almost has a lavender quality to it.
oh, that's very interesting. So herbal almost. Is it? Would you call it sort of a bittersweet style of honey, or is it more straight sweet? Do you think?
Oh, it's very, very sweet, this one.
Okay,
It's
got it.
like it might as well be toffee.
Mm. Yeah, there's some chestnut honey that I've had before, which had a much, much more earthy, bitter sort of herbal quality to it in some ways, which was very, very fascinating. I need to find some more of that someday.
Oh, and by the way, it pairs extremely well with brie, which was that was the knife that I just licked that off of, was my brie knife.
Mm.
And I was like,
There's a
that tasted like sort of cheesy and yeasty, and I'm like, oh well, that's because it's a cheese knife, and yeah. So yeah, sort of my construction of the cheese, like I usually try to make it look pretty because I'm like serving it to my wife and all that sort of stuff. But sometimes I'm just gonna
Sure.
throw this stuff on a plate and just go to town. And I've got some whole grain, like all seeds crackers is what's there in the back.
Yeah, no, those are very lovely.
So they work for pretty much any kind of cheese.
Hmm. So we're going to be talking a little bit about first I suppose, the anatomy of the cheese board. And there are a wide variety of ways to do it. There's the way that you just posted up from your Instagram and such. Are you able to put up one of those photos that I popped up in the Discord? If they're high
Perhaps.
quality enough to even look good, we'll find out.
Oh, I think they are. Hang on. Again, too many clicks. I'll figure this. I'll get better at this.
Oh, it's fine. Yes, little lady, how are you doing? It is a baby.
Yeah, there you go. Always good. Sorry, let me zoom in on the cat. This is very important. This is extremely
important. Oh, she's a very good cat. Soon enough, I'll be moving into an office that will actually have a much brighter sort of lighting situation, so I'll be able to look better. So, I'm going to be talking about a little bit about the anatomy of a cheese board today. So you chose two cheeses. It looked like a cheddar and a brie, correct?
Oh, I totally forgot to talk about the cheeses. Yeah, so obviously the brie, and the other cheese that I had there was also from Costco, and it was this one, which is a Havarti from Costco.
Oh, a Havarti! How wonderful. So, as you can see, I've gone a little bit more overboard today, I would call it.
Yeah, you've got fruit on there, which fresh fruit, which is
Yeah.
I usually do, and also just seeing the olive oil with the garlic in it makes me wish that I had had 15 more minutes to actually put some effort.
Yeah. So when we talk about pairing cheeses, now with the cheese board, one of the nicest things about having a cheese board is naturally having a variety of options to eat things with. As you can see, I have 4 cheeses on my plate from left to right. That is a somewhat funkier. Now, I did break the rules right here. I totally forgot about it until I brought this to the table. This is a beer washed cheese, a very funky, semi-soft beer washed cheese. Directly to the right of that in the picture, this little guy. This is half a wheel of goat's milk brie, I should say. So a little bit funkier, a little bit more acidic than your classic triple cream cow's milk brie or something like that. Down on the bottom is a much harder Basque cheese. So as you can see, rind intact on this one, somewhat thick. We're looking at a lot of somewhat softer, funkier cheeses. This one is definitely the saltiest, hardest cheese right here, but this is going to have some things in common with a few other Spanish styles of cheese like manchego and such, although a little bit softer than manchego, a little bit nicer than some manchegos that I've found out there. And then up at the top right is one of my favorite cheeses that I can just easily find. This is the Délice de Bourgogne, cheese from Burgundy that Trader Joe's sells. Very, very. I'm not even going to try to pick this thing up. Very, very soft. Very, very sticky. Very, very funky. We're talking a very smelly cheese right here. The Basque and the goat's cheese are a lot less funky, but the two on either top corners of that much more funky in style. Now, to start with the anatomy of the cheese board, we'll go with the accoutrements, all the other things that you see on the board right here. We'll go into those a little bit more after we talk about the pairing of the cheeses. We're going to get a little bit into some very basic forms of flavor theory and things like that, but not all of it's going to be set in stone or anything like that. When you're choosing a cheese, you want to do something like you did, Doug. You took 2 cheeses. These cheeses were opposed to each other. Havarti was a bit more crumbly, a little bit harder, much saltier than a brie. Brie, much cleaner flavor, much creamier mouthfeel and things like that. These are very important when choosing a cheese. For my part, if I ever pop a cheese on a board that is a very soft cheese, you want to have at least one hard cheese on there. Normally, my choice is going for the Delice de Bourgogne, something like that, or Brie, and then going into a very old Gouda right after that. These are very complementary, both in their flavors. Gouda, very salty, very intense. Brie, a little bit more funky, a little bit more sort of light in flavor. But one of the big ways that they sort of contrast is their actual texture. Now, for this one, a lot of softer ones. There's the lovely sort of semi-soft beer-aged cheese on the top left. You can just sort of pick that up. You can eat that with bread and things like that. You can do a lot of different things with this cheese. With the actual Delice de Bourgogne, you need the bread to eat it and things like that. I can't touch this stuff without getting it all over everything. So that brings us into what you're actually pairing some of these cheeses with and things like that. Now this gets a lot more into your own personal choices. I went for a somewhat weird cheese board today. This cheese board has, as it were, steak on it. That sort of brown stuff in the middle right, sort of edged by the Delice de Bourgogne and the olive bread and such, is a little 7-bone, very thin 7-bone steak I picked up today. This will add our savory component. See, pardon me while I try to get all the Delice de Bourgogne off my fingers. See, when you are making one of these meals, one of these cheese boards, not only do you want to have a wide variety of cheeses, but the thing about some of these cheeses is that most of them, not all of them necessarily, will have very similar flavors. We're talking salty. We are talking, in some cases, a little bit of acid going on, and a lot of fat. These things are going to pair very well with certain other flavors. You really want to have a certain amount of savory flavors going on your cheese board. Most of the time, this is going to take the form of cured meat and things like that. But some other times, you can also get some spices or things like that, or some much deeper, darker flavored jams and honeys and things like that. Orange marmalade is a wonderful way to get some bitterness on your board right here. For my part, I didn't have too many bitter things hanging out in my house right now, so I actually grabbed this little bowl of olive oil. This is a very sort of bitter Spanish olive oil that I grated a little bit of garlic into and then put the 2 halves of that garlic clove inside of it. This is going to give a little bit of some bitterness to the very end, but as well, a little bit more fat. This is going to counteract a lot of that, a lot of the acid on the table. That goat's cheese brie going to have a little bit more acid inside of it on account of it being goat's cheese. The Delice de Bourgogne has a surprising amount of acid in it for a very soft cheese. We're also looking at these little guys right over here, the gooseberries. Gooseberries are these wonderful little berries. They're almost like tomato-esque in their texture. They're very tart this time of year, at least when I can find them. They are very juicy. They're very good. They're not particularly sweet. They have a lot more straight tart flavors going on. And when you are pairing tart flavors, you really want to lean into the mix of that tartness and that acid. That's why I also have a big old sort of little tiny river thing of these green apples running through the center of the board. Let's see. For texture wise, this is one of the most important things about a cheese board to me. You've got a lot of soft textures on this board. Semi-soft cheese, the very soft Bourgogne, and the brie. You have the olive bread, which has a nice sort of crunchy exterior, but is in and of itself somewhat softer, somewhat chewier. You want to balance that out. In my particular case, that's the apples right here. Very crunchy, good Granny Smith apples. These guys have a lot of structure. They're very good at that. We've also got one of my absolute favorite things from Trader Joe's, their cranberry pumpkin little crackers this year. They are amazing. I will just eat these with cheese pretty much every day of the week if given half of a chance. They have other style. They have other ones. Normally, I think rosemary and fig and raisin and raisin, and some herb, but I forget which one. The pumpkin cranberry ones are definitively the best, in my opinion. These
You're
guys.
really making me want to go to Trader Joe's right now.
Okay, so I got pretty much everything on here from Trader Joe's because that's where I shop for my cheese. Because we do not have cheese shops down here in this part of Arizona. This is the Trader Joe's, just where you find the best cheese, and because they have all the cheese, they also have all of the accoutrements that come with it, which is very nice.
Yeah,
The
when I
great,
go to Trader Joe's, I'm usually thinking cheese. Like I rarely
yeah,
walk into a Trader Joe's without walking out with some cheese.
yeah. If you haven't had this Delice de Bourgogne, I do highly suggest it. It's a beautiful sort of addition to any cheese board because it really fills a niche that you can't really get unless you do have a cheesemonger or something a little bit fancier right near you, in my opinion. That sort of much more fermented style going on here.
Yeah, you say gooey and stinky, and like
Hmm.
even though I have tastes in whiskey which lean that way,
Hmm.
I like something about that just like doesn't necessarily appeal to me. Like I have a line when it comes to cheese, and I push that line sometimes, but like I have a hard time eating uncooked blue cheese
Mm.
because
Okay.
the obvious mold right in your face is a little bit much for me to get over. But if it's cooked, it's like, oh, okay, people, it's not poison. I don't know. It's a weird thing. Like it's completely irrational, but I'm like more or less okay with cooked blue cheese, but not raw blue cheese.
Yeah, the Bourgogne is doesn't have any actual mold in it, not that you can see. I mean, the outside of it, the rind is definitely like that, but it does have that flavor. Very, very distinct, that kind of blue cheese flavor going on in this guy. Effectively, what you are looking to represent in a cheese board is as many of these complementary flavor pairings as you can. There are two primary ways that you're going to pair flavors between these, and this can go for wine tasting, this can go for pairing of any sort of thing. You're looking for either ones that work together. This is serving your Chardonnay alongside a creamy pasta dish or something like that. Some of these flavors in here will work together, especially if your Chardonnay is oat or something like that. But you can also choose to go the opposite direction, as in the case of serving a very sort of rich kind of creamy cheese with a much, much brighter, leaner, acidic wine. Your oh gosh, Puy Fusset or Sancerre or something like that from the Loire Valley over in France. I'm gutting off into wine recommendations for cheese boards. Are very, very
Yeah, it's a
wonderful.
little bit dangerous territory for dry wheat, but I,
Yeah,
I
for
don't
dry
exactly
wheat.
have wine to go
In
grab. So
yeah, and
that'll come up at some point. I mean, it's really hard to talk cheese without talking wine pairings too.
yeah.
So
In my particular case, I have a somewhat sweeter vinegar-based thing that I made. Um, Came out
sort of like a spiced wine substitute kind of thing going on.
something like that. It came out a little bit more like genepi, honestly, kind of like an acidic genepi.
You have officially worked harder at at this than me. I was just like black
um,
tea. Black tea will do. That's what I usually have when I'm having honey.
yeah, it comes. A lot of it comes with practice and things like that. This kind of cheese board is just something that my partner and I make weekly, pretty much these days.
Mm.
We have a lot of cheese hanging around. We use it for a variety of different things. But like say, I probably will not be eating all of this cheese tonight. I'm probably going to get to all the fruit and such. This podcast is really just an excuse for me to eat dinner tonight.
Right? I had exactly the same thought. This right here is my
Yeah,
dinner. Right? There's enough. There's probably a solid pound of cheese and other sorts of things on there.
yeah. So,
Also, welcome to the stream, Joe. There's the cheese that we've had up on stream for a good 20 minutes now that we just took down right before you joined. So it's there. Promise we've been showing off cheese. Oh,
it's
okay. Yeah. So yeah, now's a good time for some questions. Let me put that up. There we go. Diwu Streams asks, cheese is protein, right?
well, I mean, Some cheese can have more protein in it than other things, but cheese is mostly fat.
Most of the calories are from fat, but yeah, there's protein in cheese. It's a
Yeah.
really good hiking food because it's like easy to carry, dense. It'll sustain you, like you eat lunch and it'll sustain you for the rest of the day.
Oh my gosh. When I was hiking back over in Spain, um, what my partner and I do, we would get up about six in the morning. We would go down. We would wait for them to serve breakfast out in the thing. We would grab like two like each like a half of a baguette or whatever kind of bread that they had in the whatchamacallit, the hotel that morning or wherever we were staying, and we would just grab a bunch of cheese, usually manchego and a few other types, and a little bit of cured meat or something like that. Usually there was a little bit of chorizo or something like that hanging out, some salames and things like that, and a lot of oh gosh, Spanish cured meats escape me sometimes. I'll have to remember that. But we would just like eat like probably about half a pound of cheese and meat and fruits and things like that every morning. And then that would sustain us for hours on the hike. We didn't get hungry until about 2 p.m. or something like that. Well, sometimes, but yeah.
Yep. Now, speaking of hiking cheese and the like, let me just interject. This doesn't fit on a cheese board, but these little guys are fantastic. And I'll just say I actually dislike that they're individually packaged, and so
Hmm.
because that's a lot of waste, right? If you're eating these for a snack, if you're taking it hiking, sure, like this is useful. But if you're just eating these as snacks at home, that's unfortunate. You should be able to get a slice of cheddar out of your fridge. So I got this is the Tillamook medium cheddar singles that are 3/4 of an ounce for some reason. Which what we've been using these for is we have English muffins and we have like these sausage patties that we got bulk from somewhere, and we've been making sausage muffins with cheese and egg and whatever we want to throw on them, and like melt that cheese on it however you want. It's like the perfect amount of cheese for an English muffin. But we're just making food at home and we don't like this individual packaging. So what we did was we went back to Costco and we got the like the hamburger singles, like it's the same, should be the same, the Tillamook medium cheddar, but like they're the big like hamburger slice of cheese size, right? And you would think that would taste the same, right? Other than it's not individually packaged, and it doesn't. Like the moisture content of it is different even when the package was freshly opened, and like it doesn't have the same richness and fattiness to it somehow. Very confused by that because I thought it would be equivalent. Once you melt it down, does serve the same purpose, but munching on a slice of that is not the same as munching on a pack of this. So I don't know. I'm disappointed.
Yeah. You can always buy the giant like 3 pound things of Tillamook at Costco, but
Yeah, the other problem with that is you have to be ready to eat a lot of cheese before it
a
dries
lot
out.
of cheese.
And so now we have one of those, and I'm going to be eating a lot of cheese. So, yeah. Cheese episode has prompted me to have way too much cheese in my house.
Hey, it's great. It's my favorite. Yeah, I'm a really big fan of Tillamook. I didn't used to live too far from there, only a couple hours from their plant over in Idaho. Pretty good company, quite honestly. They make very good cheese. They're very, from what I've heard, they're pretty good with their workers and things like that. But yeah, no, it's a nice, very nice American brand of cheese. Not really sort of trying to push any boundaries or anything like that, but lovely stuff.
Boundaries on what?
Cheese
Oh,
making
oh, they
style.
they are not pushing boundaries. Yeah,
Ah, my bad. Yes.
yeah. I thought you meant like pushing my boundaries. Like I don't know. I mean, I should try that recommendation that you have there.
Mm.
There was I don't know what was it. It was Beecher's makes a really bizarre looking cheese. That is it's like aged in some kind of ash.
Oh yeah, totally.
Um, and it looks like cheese that's gone very bad.
Yeah, is it the one that looks like a brain?
A little, but this one had like a streak of the whatever ash, palm ash or whatever it was running through the middle.
Yeah, I know
Um,
what you're talking about.
So tried that when I visited Beecher's in Pike Place Market in Seattle, and got a slice and took it home, and we kind of forgot about it for 2 weeks. And I was like, well, it's only been 2 weeks; it's probably fine. But I'm looking at it and going like, I have no way of knowing if this has gone bad. Just no way of knowing, right? And the other thing is, they said like, oh, the longer this ages, like that ash is going to prompt like the formation of ammonia or something in the cheese, so it's going to get extra funky. And I was like, there's a point at which I'm not sure I want that anymore.
Hmm.
And I couldn't make up my mind about it for long enough that it was like 2 months later, and I was like, this is probably just gonna have to go in the garbage. And I felt really bad about it because I was so excited to buy it when we were there. I hate throwing food away.
Yeah. Yeah, the ash aging cheese is very popular with, I think, goat chevre and things like that. I think Humboldt Fog is a very famous one that has ash in it. But
That sounds familiar. Fog
yeah.
might have been the one. You're talking Beechers? Yeah, I think it was
Yeah, I
Beechers.
believe so. I'm looking up Beecher's. I cannot find their ash aged one on the internet, but it might not necessarily be on the internet very easily.
This was also last fall, so it
Yeah.
could have been like a one time thing or something like that.
A little special release of some fashion, yeah.
They also had some like extra aged cheese, and we did like the various ages of cheddar flight or whatever it was, and it was like a white cheddar, and it was
Oh.
like the 2 years old one and the 3 years old one, and one of them maybe I think was something that had to do with bourbon or bourbon wood or something was involved,
Hmm.
and like the textures of cheese change apparently quite dramatically as they get like professionally aged, right? If I let cheese age in my fridge, it doesn't survive, right? Like I don't
Yeah.
aging cheese is a whole different thing.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I've never really tried making cheese at home before. Well, I've never successfully gotten to the point where it's not milk anymore, but take that as you will.
All right,
No,
while
it's a
you're
very fascinating one.
I guess I'll call you off the hunt there on trying to find the product listing so that
Yeah,
we can
I've stopped.
not
I found a
not
few couple of things.
yeah, so we can not have dead air here.
Yeah.
So I made reference to this a little bit earlier that the reason I invited you to do the presentation on cheese boards is because I was aware that you have a background in the hospitality industry, and that in a sentence is pretty much all I know about your background. And I was wondering if you would actually maybe want to wow,
Talk about that?
words are escaping me right now. Yeah,
Indeed.
talk about that. Do the mouth thing.
Yeah, so to talk about that, we're going to have to talk about a few different and distinct types of cheeses here. So, one of my first jobs in the hospitality industry was at a Swiss restaurant in DC. Very, very lovely place. Very focused on cheese, naturally. The Swiss make amazing cheeses. This one had a distinct focus on a style of cheese called raclette. I had grown up eating this cheese just for unrelated reasons. But raclette is a very stinky cow and sheep milk cheese, sometimes, mostly cow, I believe, made usually in. It really depends on who you ask. The Swiss will always say that the Swiss raclette is better. The French will naturally say that the French raclette is better. I like the Swiss raclette, but don't trust me. But it's a very stinky cheese. It smells a little bit like feet. And what you do is traditionally you put it in front of a heating element, sometimes a fire. These days, usually an element that is explicitly designed for this purpose. And you melt the very top end of the. Here, let's grab this guy of the wheel of cheese. You melt it and then you scrape it off onto things. Usually pickles and potatoes traditionally, but there are other options as well. Honestly, you can do it with meats and things like that if you want to. But let's see. So we were doing this. There's also little grills and such. I thought about bringing mine out for this, but it's still a bit too hot around here to comfortably cook raclette by yourself, where you put the raclette in little trays. You put it underneath the heating element. That heating element is going to melt the raclette, and then you scrape it off onto things all the same. But so I worked in this um, place for several years, from when I kind of started in 2017 to when the pandemic happened in 2020. This And when the pandemic happened, I moved away from DC, and I have not yet been able to get back to the place. It's still going strong, if I understand correctly, and it seems quite lovely. But so with working in a Swiss place, you start to learn about a lot of different cheeses. So most popular thing that we had, most common thing that we had was raclette. This is a very classic thing. We also had a little bit of fondue. Fondue notable for being a trick. It's not really a traditional dish over in Switzerland. They eat a lot of it, but primarily because after World War II and such, they had a massive excess of cheese. So they had to make up a new dish for people to eat, especially for people to eat over in the UK and America, so that they could export a lot of their cheese that they made too much of. So fondue, it was an interesting thing that we did. But some of the more interesting cheeses was, if you ever do find it, Hochhebrig is a sort of high altitude cheese from Switzerland, made out of sheep's milk, if memory serves, where the rind is washed with salt and herbs. You get these very deep flavors, or somewhat sort of semi-hard cheese. And then one of the things that we had all year round was tête de moine, monk's head cheese, where you very, very hard cheese, where you take this big round of it. Rounds are only about this big, so not crazy. You sort of put it underneath a little blade, and you spin the blade around the top to make sure that it shaves off these little florets of cheese and such, which was traditionally served with things like pear bread and such. Very wonderful stuff. The name itself comes from monks who would shave the very, very tops of their head with a very similar apparatus, actually. Um, but
That sounds
gosh,
mildly
this is
terrifying, to be honest. Like let's stick a thing and just spin
yeah,
spin a razor blade
just spin
around.
the razor around on the top of your head. Gotta love it. Um, I'm not actually sure why they shave the top of their heads, honestly.
Something about I think it has to do with like not having your hair in the way between you and God or something like that.
Fair enough.
But
I'll
I
take
could be
that.
completely making that up. I think I heard that somewhere.
Yeah. Um, but let's see. So yeah, my history there, that was mostly when I was not yet that was a good portion of that when I had first started, was when I was not yet um 2021 and such. So I happened to know a lot about alcohol at the time, just because I had been taught a lot of it by my family, by other jobs that I'd had and things like that up to that point. That was sort of when I started really studying wine, as it were. Very good pairing wine with cheese. We had a lot of French wines at the Swiss place. We had a decent amount of Swiss wines, which are hard to find and get very expensive, just on account of Switzerland being a very expensive place to exist. Um, so that was kind of what kickstarted the my interest in wine, and that was how I got into the alcohol business afterwards. In no small part due to the fact that everyone loves cheese, and wine is one of the best things possible to pair with cheese. I'll fight anyone who says differently, I suppose, but you could do
Well,
it with beer.
we're gonna just a little spoiler and a little teaser for people who are watching. I think we're going to try our hands at, because we're gonna have a glut of cheese on our hands. We may very well try our hands at doing a whiskey and cheese pairing next week,
Should work.
or in the near future.
Hmm.
I don't know about you, and I will absolutely ask you to come back to your story in a minute. But I don't know about you, but I do think whiskey doesn't pair with much food very well. But one thing I found it does pair really well with, especially if you let go of the idea of critically tasting whiskey on a given day, cheese and the various things that you would pair with cheese. Anything cheese boardish or charcuterie, pairs pretty well with whiskey because it's like when the food gets to be spicy or heavy. I find I don't quite agree that whiskey pairs well with steak, for example. I think the steak,
Nah.
either the steak or the whiskey will overpower the other depending on the relative strengths. They don't play well together. They don't enhance each other, right? A good pairing makes both things better. So yeah, that's little teaser, a little bit of philosophy. We'll try our best and see if we can come up with some good cheese and whiskey pairings.
There are four foods that pair well with whiskey, in my opinion. Um, there is naturally chocolate. That can be hard chocolate, that can be brownies, that can be hot chocolate. One of my favorite things ever, right around Christmas time, is Maker's Mark 46 and hot chocolate. It's amazing. Um,
Oh
there
man,
is,
don't do that to
yeah.
me. Don't do that to me.
um, there's chocolate. This is a very natural pairing. There's a lot of nice kind of softness in the chocolate, coats your palate in a certain way. It can bring out a certain amount of flavors from the whiskey itself, but I don't think that it interferes with whiskey too much. There is my personal favorite savory food, I suppose, potatoes. Not everyone agrees with me on this one. Potatoes are honestly even a little bit more for your stomach than for your palate. Whiskey doesn't pair with potatoes for any reason, like on the palate, other than the fact that they're starchy and they're quite nice. They sit in your stomach really well and sort of make that whole interaction able to happen a little bit better. I think cheese pairs excellently with whiskey. There's a certain amount of that creaminess, that richness that really that whiskey can cut through a little bit more. That I think does very, very well. And the last thing that pairs well with whiskey is whatever you eat after it. Quite honestly, either that being drunk food or whatever you sort of go to after having had whiskey. This is less of a pairing in and of itself, and more whiskey as an aperitif is something I feel quite strongly about.
Right. Also a PSA to please eat.
Please eat. Always eat. But that's why I like potatoes. They don't interfere all that much with the flavor of the whiskey that much, especially if you've just roasted some and put a little bit of salt on them. My favorite snack with whiskey. But yeah, always eat. Always eat with your whiskey. It feels real bad if you don't.
Mm-hmm. I've had ill-advised, sessions of going to whiskey tastings and not having had eaten beforehand, knowing there would be snacks there, and yet still recognizing that that is a bad decision.
Yeah, there's just sometimes when it just doesn't work out quite right in that way.
I,
Yeah.
I guess probably a better way of phrasing that is even though whiskey works as an aperitif, you should eat first.
You should eat during that. Always eat your appetizers and things like that with your aperitifs and such. That's what they're for.
Yeah. Yeah, the whiskey's
Whiskey
not the
as a
appetizer. Don't do
yeah.
that.
Whiskey as sort of an end of the meal thing is where you're going to be tasting it a little bit more, I would say. Whiskey as dessert is a very nice time, quite honestly.
Yeah, I'd say that's one of the ways that I keep my health in like I used to be a real bad snacker. And part of
Mm.
that was being an athlete, so like always having carb cravings. Um, I had to make a rule for myself. I cannot have whiskey and dessert on the same day.
Mm.
And that actually works really well for um, yeah, when I first got into whiskey, I lost like a ton of weight because of just shifting my habits around food to make room for the whiskey in the schedule as it is. Uh, I think this comment from Rich um, was about the steak and whiskey pairings. If we think that
Wait,
doesn't work, we're not doing it right. Uh, I don't
where
know.
did you find that?
Just from the YouTube chat. Because we're on both.
Oh,
Oh, did I not tell you? We're simultaneously
no.
streaming on YouTube and Twitch today.
Oh my God, I need to open up a YouTube page as well. That's
Actually,
crazy.
no, you don't, because you're in StreamYard and there's a comments tab on the top right.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I didn't realize that was, oh my gosh. Oh, that's crazy. All right, I'm just going to leave this thing open for all the time now. Excellent.
Yeah, I'm trying not to stare at it because I'm bad about that. Also, Also, he says whiskey main
Whiskey
course,
main course.
and that happens more often than not when I go to a tasting. So yeah, there's like some appetizers and lots of whiskey, and there's usually some chocolate, and chocolate is dessert, and that's my rule about snacking and whiskey on the same day doesn't apply when it's an event. Right? That's
I
just in terms of the daily.
Yeah, I will say, in my opinion, oh, hey there, Pawn. I didn't realize that was you. In my opinion, there is a very, very vast difference between pairing whiskey with steak and pairing whiskey with barbecue. I think that pairing whiskey with barbecue can be very, very excellent. But also, to be completely fair, I don't really eat that much steak myself.
Yeah, my preferred way of pairing whiskey with barbecue is drinking bourbon while I'm making barbecue.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right, let's get back to your story actually, because I was invested in that, and I felt like
Right.
I wanted to give you a little reprieve by saying anything at all, but please do continue.
Yeah. So a little bit before the pandemic started, I was still working at this place. I got my I had left college for the second time, and I had gotten my I went out and got my why do I keep starting the sentence? I forget what it's called. My certified sommelier from the Court of Master Sommeliers. So the how to say
Make
so
yourself
for
comfortable
that,
first.
that was primarily my come again.
Just make yourself comfortable before you get into it.
Yeah, right. So this was when I was working primarily with wine. I was also working at a little place over in Virginia, Northern Virginia, a little wine shop and such. So this is where I was primarily um, working with wine and such. I didn't really get into whiskey that much. I'd drunken a lot of it. I enjoyed quite a lot of it. It was not really my bread and butter or anything like that. In some ways, wine still is, quite honestly. I know too much about wine for it to not be at this point. But so at that point, that was the November before the pandemic. Once 2020 rolled around, I the restaurant that I was working at, the Swiss place, was naturally not doing very many things anymore. So I was mainly just working at the wine shop, which was a very, very busy year just on account of the fact that people bought a lot more alcohol in 2020 than pretty much any other year that that shop had been extant. There was a lot of sort of shipping and ordering and things like that because the state had just allowed it to be delivered locally and elsewhere. But that was a whole thing right there. I moved out to Idaho in 2021 in the middle of the Mormon area of Idaho. So I didn't work with alcohol for about a year and forgot more about wine than most of the people in the town that I was in had ever probably known. Um, so that was an interesting time because I also studied and got my WSET level 2 at the time when I was over there, which is a nice thing to have. I'm probably going to be going for my WSET level 3 at some point, maybe a few other certifications just because I want them. And they have very, very cool little pins that they give you once you get the certifications, little lapel pins and such. But so after that, I'd moved out here to Arizona and started working at the whiskey distillery at Del Bach, primarily because I didn't know much about the wine areas right around here. There's a surprising amount of wine out here in Arizona, but I didn't really know much about it. And I knew that there was this place, Del Bach, that had actually gotten some very interesting reviews and things like that. So I've been working at Del Bach for about the past year or so, and I've learned more about whiskey than I had ever known before. So that's a whole thing right there. But most of my focus in my spare time and on sort of my own has been in the history of drinking, the cultural history of drinking primarily. I've read a lot of books on that in particular. And that's where a lot of my historical whiskey knowledge and things like that comes from. Whereas most of my other knowledge is still, quite honestly, based primarily in wine. That is most of the story of my uh, history of working in the industry, leaving out large swaths of it that don't really matter very much. But yeah,
Fair.
yeah.
That was more history than I feel like I bargained for, and that's great.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've finally done the Ian reverse interview, or I don't know, interview,
yeah.
right? I'm the host after all, right? But yeah, nice. And Phil wasn't here to probably have better questions than I would have had about that. So, um, but actually, I guess I do have some follow up questions.
Yeah.
So I recently learned that sommelier education includes some education about spirits as well.
Oh, yeah.
Is that true? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, uh, given that there's really no like industry accepted, like universally accepted accolade for whiskey expertise, it actually seems like the best thing you could do is get a sommelier certification if you wanted to be deemed in any way a whiskey or spirits expert.
You can. There is a spirits section of the WSET, which would be very, very good for people looking to further their knowledge, but it is not sort of held in quite as high regard as the wine WSETs and such. There's also some very good ones about sake that I should do someday because I don't know anything about sake. But for the WSETs and such, especially even for wine, you need to know about spirits. You need to know about the designations of mezcal, of whiskey, the areas that make it, what they taste like. Because if you go up to a table and if you're working in a service setting and you go up to a table and someone asks you about wine and you're prepared to talk about it, but someone asks you about whiskey and you're absolutely not, that's just kind of unacceptable for the industry and such, naturally. So yeah, it's a very good thing to get into. A basis in wine will also give you a very good basis in flavor theory, the ways in which you can talk about the things that you're tasting, talk about the notes and things like that, and that I think translates very, very well into tasting both whiskey and wine and such. Coffee as well, but I'm not nearly as good at coffee as I am at some other things. Coffee is not something that I am particularly proficient at, I would say.
It's good information. Naturally, you
Yeah.
can see where my head is going on this because I feel like, I've been at least industry adjacent for a number of years, uh, and I feel like it would be good to have some sort of actual certification in the
Yeah.
area. Um, so I guess another question is, how long does it take to get the WSET level one?
Not well. So there's a few options right here. So the level one is in both the WSAT and the Court of Master Sommeliers is an introductory course of sorts. You can, well, I know that you could definitely get your certified directly in the Court of Master Sommeliers. I believe you can get the level two directly in the WSET. But how long? So for the WSET, it was a series of the classes and such over the course of a couple of months. And for me, at least, so I took mine down in Salt Lake City. It was a series of classes for a couple of months and then a test. For the Court of Master Sommeliers, it was just a sort of study thing right beforehand and then a test. For my part, um, I mean, how to say this? From when I was able to buy my own spirits and wine and such, I got my certified sommelier when I was just about to when I was 22. Actually, yeah, I was turning it was I was turning 23 in the February after that in November. So that was when I got my certified. So to be honest with you, if you have a good knowledge base and things like that, it won't take you that long to get the level two. Now, when we're talking about level three and level four as a master of wine, and forget level four master sommelier and the quarter master sommeliers, that will take you years, sometimes longer. The general line for going to a master sommelier, if you're very dedicated, is about 10 years, which will include effectively apprenticeships and things like that for that period of time. But the primary thing that you can do for yourself for the WSET, you need to study a lot. You need to study agriculture quite a lot more than you might think that you have to. But otherwise, you're going to want to drink a lot of wine and things like that. That is going to help you a lot, sort of expanding your knowledge base. That is highly suggested for the WSET and such. That is a necessity to go forward in the Court of Master Sommeliers and such. And pretty much any test where you're doing blind tastings, this is going to be a necessity. But yeah, because you're going to want to know what that tastes like on your palate. That's going to be one of the most important bits of some of those tests right there.
Yep, being able to identify, if I recall correctly, there's the test involved things like blind identifying, like down to like maybe even the estate of where the wine might have come from.
You can. So I'm going to be honest with you. I have not taken the Court of Master Sommeliers exam, and that one is probably the most rigorous. From what I was explained to the Court of Master Sommeliers, that is probably a little bit of of a of an exaggeration right there. But when you're taking that level 4 test, when you're taking your Master Sommelier exam, they're going to give you wines that are rare and uncommon and not the most easily obtainable. By the time you get into that, and if you know what those wines are, you can probably do a sort of guess about which estate those ones are from or where precisely they might be grown in that area. When we're talking about like guessing Bordeaux's, I mean, even you can guess which side of the river a Bordeaux is made on fairly easily. They use different grapes. They taste different. They're different styles. There are some vintners that will just do different things with some of their wines, with certain Bordeaux's and things like that. Like Lafite Rothschild will taste quite different than a Bordeaux Superior naturally, or things like that. For the actual exam for the blind tastes and such, what they're looking for is they're looking for you to be able to tell where it came from, the area, what grapes. Gosh, it's been so long since I took that test. The grapes that were used, how old those wines were, when the harvest was, and things like that. Which, depending on where they're asking about, like if it's Bordeaux, you can generally figure that out because you probably have tasted a variety of ages of Bordeaux by that point, and variety of what do you call it? Variety of vintages and things like that as well. But yeah,
Yeah. Do you want me to
ice
pop up that
wine
comment?
from
Yeah.
Pawn right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
That one is a very distinct one. You can tell what an ice wine is fairly easily. They have a very, very crisp flavor to them that you don't necessarily find in other things like Sauternes and things like that, where those grapes will have been actually infected with a type of fungus, gray rot, that will then turn into noble rot and condense the sugars with that. So you get these kind of honeyed, somewhat fermented flavors going on. For ice wine, you just let them freeze on the vine and such. Canada is a big producer of ice wine. They're absolutely wonderful. Germany has long been a producer of ice wine, but that's changing a little bit with global warming and such. So that's a whole thing. The southern area of Germany is in a few decades projected to have the climate of the southern parts of France. So take that all as you will right there. You can find some very, very good sweet wines in Germany, Eiswein and Trockenbier and Auslese and such. But those get into a little bit more things. Yeah, I do highly suggest ice wine as your dessert, though.
Yeah. We are, of course, teasing that we have a wine expert, and we will at some point be doing a wine episode. And as long as we have a glut of cheese on our hands, we might try to fit that in before we
Might
all run
as
out.
well.
Yeah, I mean, cheese is great for early fall, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It is beautiful. Yeah.
Should have had ChatGPT put that in my poem earlier. It would have been apropos of the day, the cheese episode and all. Yeah, thanks for all the
The
information about wine. Even though we're
Yeah,
not doing a wine
absolutely.
episode right now, right?
No.
These are just flowing conversations.
Hmm.
Did you?
The pairing of wine with cheese is actually somewhat contentious, I suppose the word would be.
Interesting.
I believe the British have long paired their cheeses with red wines, something that I would suggest you not do.
Why is that?
We'll say this board that I have that I've made right here. I might choose a light red wine, a Pinot Noir, something like that, because I've got actual steak on that board. I've got some incredibly rich cheeses, but unless you have some very particular red wines, you're really just missing out on the bright acidity of those whites, or the creaminess of an oak Chardonnay. Not my first choice necessarily, but you're missing out on a few of the things that. That a white wine will really bring to the table that might get lost in a red or something like that. Especially if you're pairing a darker red like a Bordeaux or a Cabernet with it. Not really what I would suggest. A bit too rich and things like that. For this one, I could pair a lighter Spanish or a Burgundy or an Oregon Pinot Noir maybe with that one. But nothing too heavy right here. It's going to overpower some of the cheeses on that table, bring a bit too much fruitiness to it, I think.
For this cheese board, I absolutely see why you would prefer a white. I mean, if nothing else,
Hmm.
it would just match with the apple and the berries a little bit
Oh,
better, I
yeah.
think.
Hmm.
Also, whites usually scan for me as a little bit more like they're tart, yes, but usually a little bit more on the sweet and floral side.
Hmm. Yeah.
But I have a very limited wine experience, so I could just be missing out. So I think it would complement the. I was going somewhere with that. I don't know. Today's not a good day for words. I apologize.
The same. It's all the cheese.
It
Makes
must
it
be.
hard.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, it's the mold. It's getting to our heads.
But
Yeah. So,
yeah.
any questions from chat about cheese in general, or any more questions? I guess.
Yeah. Any more questions?
Well, seeing none,
Oh,
oh, there's one.
not that I would say that about wine. I just think it's a funny bit. Not quite sure what you're talking about, Genji.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand that.
Pawn says that we both seem distracted, and we are by cheese.
Yeah, it turns out that doing like we are used to sipping whiskey while talking about stuff, and
Yeah.
eating is actually a totally different thing. It turns out as far as a live stream skill, and maybe this was a bad idea. They can't all be
Maybe, well,
winners.
I think we might need a third person for an eating stream. Quite honestly,
Yeah,
two people to talk while the other person munches a bit or something like that. Yeah.
yeah. And for anyone who's wondering, Phil is fine. He just unfortunately has a work schedule problem at the moment that is he's been having to work late on Thursdays, and that should change soon, or we'll find another day to stream because we like having him on.
Oh yeah. No, yeah. Some of your comments are not, in fact, going through Genji. Interesting.
Oh, that's a shame. Well, it's I guess it's convenient to have them echoed in. Uh,
Oh no, so they're not showing up on Twitch either. I don't really know why.
yeah, don't know.
Hmm.
Oh well. Probably best not to try to troubleshoot live.
Indeed, not right now. At the very
We're
least.
learning. Though on that
Yeah.
note, our regular listeners, let us know. This is our second stream so far using this new platform that we've picked up. And one of the cool things it lets us do is we get to simultaneously stream to YouTube and Twitch. And one of the nice things about streaming directly to YouTube is that our VODs are actually going to be under the live tab instead of being video exports from Twitch that just show up in the main videos channel and sort of pollute the edited content with unedited content. It kind of makes it hard to see. So that was one thing that I wanted for a while, was to actually try streaming on YouTube. And the other thing is there frankly are different audiences between Twitch and YouTube, and it's entirely possible that YouTube will be a better platform for this kind of content that we're doing. but that doesn't mean that we want to necessarily leave Twitch behind, because we've sort of grown up this stream with Twitch. And so for the time being, we're going to probably do this simultaneously stream to both platforms. Not to mention, Twitch actually has some nice tools for making shorts, which I published a couple earlier today. Sure, why not? Why not do a little bit of self promotion? We're at the end of the stream anyway. Here, move this over there. I accidentally made us go viral, I guess, because I posted this video and it had like 100 views in 10 or 15 minutes, and then it just kept going. Oh, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
really?
I'm
It's
not
been
showing.
going still?
I'm not showing that on screen yet. Yeah,
Was
yeah.
this two
It's still
shots of
ticking up.
vodka?
Yeah, the 2 shots of vodka. That reference. Thank you, Genji, for that reference. It apparently oops all memes is the right way to do this streaming game, or this YouTube game. By far that is the most views I've gotten on anything. On Instagram or YouTube or anything like that. So the algorithm is telling me to do more of that, I guess, and this is how we end up with that kind of content all over the place. So I appreciate it. Everybody who's been who's been checking out the YouTube channel and found us via that silly video that we did. Hopefully there's going to be more of that kind of thing, because we tend to have moments of hilarious whatever that happens on stream, and we're trying to do a better job of capturing it so that you don't have to watch 2 hours at a time of us talking to experience the little funny bits. So it's just another way of experiencing us, I suppose.
I would also like to note, just for the sake of doing so, I don't wear the same outfit to every stream. I just own a lot of striped shirts and blue work shirts.
I didn't notice that, but that is funny. It's clearly different stripes. Here you're wearing a red and white striped shirt, and I think that was blue and
exactly,
white.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Well, all right.
So,
Yeah, I mean, aside from like maybe part of the thing here is that we didn't have an agenda so much that we would avoid dead air. So it could be this might actually be our most dead airy episode we've ever done.
yeah, no, it's an interesting one. We'll have to figure that out. Probably not going to make a massive cheese board next time we do a cheese episode. Might just have a couple little samples right here. I just kind of wanted to make one for the talk about the anatomy of a cheese board, which we should revisit someday. We had an offer of talking with someone, I believe, very serious about cheese, if I remember right.
that was almost terrifying. I am curious what was meant by that offer. We'll have to follow up.
There are several people. I mean, there are people like sommeliers for wine, but for cheese out there. There are also people who are incredibly knowledgeable on it, because the dairy industry in the United States is such that you can make very, very good money for quality checking cheese and milk. My partner back once upon a time won awards for milk tasting, because apparently there's a lot of weird stuff in the grass and such here in the States. If the cows eat wild onions or something like that, milk's not usable. You got to figure out how to taste even the barest hints of like a little bit of sourness from wild onions and things like that in milk and cheese and such. So it's a very, very big industry and such, and that gets even more crazy over in Europe and such, where they actually have AOP designations and things like that for cheese, or whatever, the DOC in Italy, maybe. Yeah,
one of those things. Protected region designation of whatever. DOP is like designation of origin protected.
Yeah.
Protege or whatever. Like there's like the French version, there's the Italian version, but basically it's like these terms of art for things like champagne or sherry or cognac that come from a specific region, and of course applies to also types of wine and cheese and a whole lot of other products, right? Tequila and mezcal also region defined. Scotch, of course, is product of Scotland. It almost seems redundant, but that is worth saying. Yeah.
To close out a little bit of the stream and things like that here, what have you been drinking this week for dry week? Or are you planning on having any little thing tonight before you head back to whiskey over the next week or so?
Uh, Not really anything actually. For a while, so like in the winter, I tend to do this thing where I'll make a non-alcoholic toddy,
Mm.
which I described in one of our earlier episodes, I think, when we were sort of coming out of the cold season because we started up in April, which is basically hot water, honey, lemon, and cinnamon, or some other spices that I might throw in there sometimes, and just not putting any whiskey in there. And occasionally I'll put tea in that, but usually doesn't need it. And like a little splash of apple cider vinegar. And that apple cider vinegar really brings the balance to and most of like in terms of the reinvigorating, or if you've got a cold or something, like those qualities that you want from a hot toddy, you get that added in by the apple cider vinegar instead of the whiskey. So that's something that I would normally make, which I haven't been making this week, I guess, just because until yesterday it didn't really get cold enough. I did make a version of that. I mean, who doesn't enjoy like hot water with honey and lemon now and then? So that's more, I think, what I've been getting into this week. But I just have been more. It's been I've been busy, right? I've been actually trying to catch up with the podcast stuff, right? Like some of you, I mean, we call this a podcast, but you are probably aware that there is no audio podcast, right? We haven't set up an audio podcast yet. And part of that was we wanted to spend a few months figuring out if this was sustainable, if this was, if the content was any good before we committed to having an audio podcast, and then deciding how much we wanted to edit or not. And I think we've kind of come around to the idea that like the interviews are pretty good most of the time to air unedited as is. And they don't actually show up on a live stream in a lot of cases because I've taken the interviews in person. So the reason that we wanted to do a podcast in the first place was actually to have a platform to publish that kind of thing. And then, of course, we just wanted to have regular content rolling out. So the live stream, and it turns out the live stream is actually a great way to get people's audio on record. So, we started inviting people on to have interviews. So, anyway, we've been doing this for a while and sort of figured that, like, yes, actually making the content is sustainable. Now we need to start publishing the content beyond the YouTube videos. And so there is a podcast coming soon. And this week, I've been taking advantage of not doing any tasting to do the work that needs to happen ahead of having a podcast. So we come back to I solicited the help of the Whiskey Lodge to help me make a logo for the podcast, and that there in the top right corner is the concept, at least, of the logo for the podcast, which I'm calling the Tascairn, which is a sort of portmanteau of a Demi-Tasse and a Glencairn. And that is sort of the brand concept that I've had going on, and that or some version of that, or revisions down the line, that is sort of what I'd like to use if it seems good to people, I guess, if it tests well. But it certainly beats not having a profile picture on my YouTube account, I'll tell you that. Because I didn't want the YouTube account to be my face necessarily, right? I wanted it to be the Demi-Taste brand or the Whiskey Lodge brand. And yeah, so the Demi-Taste podcast, that's coming soon. Editing is underway, and we're trying to get better about editing and writing and all that. Another thing, another little piece of self-promotion. I finally made this website a WordPress, and that's not on screen. I finally made a website that I need to import all the posts from my other blogs and everything, but like I finally have demitaste.com as a WordPress website. So yeah, that's a big deal. That's something I've been working on this week. So yeah, mostly I have spent this week working as opposed to tasting, and I have not substituted whiskey for anything this week. I have just been not doing any whiskey. It happens sometimes, right? Like dry week is sometimes just a nice like schedule break. I canceled
Totally.
I canceled like all of my plans basically because I just finished up the athletic season. It's dry week. It's I've been just running, and I just cleared my whole schedule and said I am going to focus on my like cleaning up my house and my day job and work that needs to happen to make a Demi-Taste podcast happen. So that's been this week for me. What about you?
Ironically, for the dry week stuff, I've been spending more time at the distillery this week than I have in a while, just because everyone else is gone this week. It's spring break, right? It's fall break right around here. Sorry. It's
Isn't
so it's
isn't
fall break
Thanksgiving
right.
in like a month? Why do we need fall
Yeah,
break? What's this all about?
I don't know, but people are out of school or something like that. My coworkers went on um, break and things like that. My boss went on break, so I've just been we just released a new distiller's cut over at Del Bach, a very smoky one. So people are pretty into it. So there's been a lot of orders for that. Just been working sort of most days. This is my day off this week, quite honestly. So I've been at the distillery. One of the nice things for me about dry week is that it's a really, really good way to just completely reset my palate for the whiskey that I work with all of the time, because it's very good stuff. And I do forget that sometimes is just sort of one of those things.
You just go
But
palate blind tasting the same thing over and over again, right?
exactly, yeah.
That was
It's like,
that was me in December. I was pretty much only drinking Westward. And when I finally was like, and this was when I was recovering from COVID, right? So like I could taste things again, but not critically. So I was just like, yeah, this is good. I'm just gonna drink it. Like it's a nice daily drinker. And then when I got around, like I'm halfway through this bottle, I should write a review, right? I'm like, I don't know how to write notes for this because this just tastes like whiskey to me right now.
yeah, why does it taste like sand?
What?
So sometimes if I drink too many things, it tastes kind of like sand.
I cannot relate.
Oh, I don't know. Okay, well, if whenever I start getting sick, pretty much all whiskey actually tastes a little bit like iron, more specifically.
Oh, you were talking
Yeah.
about when you get sick? I thought you were talking about when you've had too much of the same thing over and
Oh
over
no, I
again.
just have too much of the same thing. Yeah, it does the same thing. I just lose.
Oh, okay.
It just sort of loses it. Anything that makes it somewhat more special. Yeah.
That reminds me, a few weeks ago, I went to the Barrel Thief, good bar. I don't know if I've talked about this
Wonderful.
before.
You've talked to me
We
about
kind of skipped a lot of weeks because I was traveling or we didn't have quorum on doing a stream or whatever. So yeah, possibly I didn't talk about this. A few weeks ago, I went to the Barrel Thief, great bar. Did a Scotch flight, mostly not smoky stuff. But like one of them was a Kalila, and
nice.
Kalila is like low on the smoke, but like compared to not peated things, it's very smoky. So you like have not peated, and then Kalila, and it's like, okay, that's really smoky. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna take that. Like, let's just set that aside at the end of that flight. I was there with my parents. Let's just like set that Kalila aside, and we're gonna order an Octomore, because Dad was interested in the Octomore that was on the menu. I said, okay, but the three of us only need half an ounce of that because first of all, it's really expensive, and second of all, it's gonna blow your face off, right? Like if you if you don't know what you're getting into, trust me, you only need a couple of sips. But the
Never
cool
actually
thing,
had an Octomore yet.
oh well, we're gonna have to fix that.
Yeah.
So we set aside the Kalila. We had a couple of sips of the Octomore. Very good. A cup with that was one of the strangest Octomores I've ever had though, because with a couple of drops of water, it turned into like mall pretzel with cheese dipping sauce. That was the flavor profile of it. Yeah, like yeah.
That's a weird one. Like Auntie
Octomore
Anne's or
does
something
weird
like
things.
that.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah. Octomore is like really heavily peated, but also has the laddie funk. So there is a cheesy edge to it a lot of the time. And the water really
Okay.
brought that out. So it turned a little bit bitter, like it had that edge of bitterness like the pretzel, and it also had that cheesiness to it. So that was pretty cool.
Okay. Almost like that baking soda character to it.
Yeah, or like I mean the pretzel is like lye washed. So that's why it has that bitter. How do you describe it? It's like it's astringent, actually. Like the
Yeah.
outside of a pretzel is astringent. That comes from that
Yeah.
lye washing that they do. So we had a couple of sips of the Octomore, which was excellent. And I said, okay, now go back to that Kalila, right? We take a sip of the Kalila. All the smoke is gone. Your palate just can't detect that smoke. That level of smoke anymore is just gone. And now Kalila is super fruity and tropical. It's like a completely different whiskey with that contrast.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to try that sometime. I don't know.
So that's palate blindness working to your advantage. Sometimes you get to taste things you otherwise
Yeah.
would not be able to taste.
Yeah, that's one of the things that that makes pairing wine or things like that with not complementary flavors, but the same flavor is really interesting. Pairing an incredibly buttery Californian Chardonnay with like buttered movie popcorn, fascinating experience. You get these very, very rich floral notes out of the Chardonnay or something like that, and a lot less of that kind of like creaminess to it. It's really weird.
I
It,
kind of like I like that idea. That's a
yeah,
strange like that doesn't seem like something that you'd like want to recommend to people, but like other
yeah,
than like hey, sometimes in order to really explore a wine or a whiskey or even a honey, cheese, whatever, you just need to pair it. You need to bounce it off a few different things. Like bounce it off of something tart, something sweet, something bitter, something buttery, something salty,
yeah.
and just see like what's there when you go back to the cheese. Just to bring
Sometimes you
it back
find
to
some
cheese.
very surprising things.
I think I saw. I mean, people do weird things with tasting coffee too, but I know honestly very little about that, so I won't comment any further.
Mm.
I think it was I was reading wine reviews, and there was one particular wine reviewer that I was reading that was like, "Here's what the wine tastes like. Now, here's what the wine tastes like after a cranberry. Here's what the wine
Mm.
tastes like after a walnut. Here's what the wine tastes like after dark chocolate." And I was like, "That's if only I had the time to do that kind of thing with whiskey." I think I would learn a lot more about my whiskeys, right? Like I do
Oh yeah.
reviews of whiskey almost entirely and intentionally on a neutral palate, sipping neat for the purest expression of the whiskey, and sort of like expect that with and I do it mostly for me. Like I started reviewing whiskey mostly for my own sake. And like to be able if mostly I guess when I say for my own sake, it's like when a friend asks me like I like whiskey, a friend asks me for a recommendation on whiskey. So I want to be able to like ask them, well, what do you like? You know, that requires them to have some vocabulary about it. But like, what whiskeys do you like? Okay, from that, I think you probably like this kind of thing, and I have a vocabulary to like go cross reference and make a recommendation from that, right? I have the point being, I rely on myself to be able to take the notes of the pure expression of the whiskey and extrapolate to something like I want a whiskey that's going to pair well with cheese. I think I know how that's gonna be, but I think I would just be guessing, right? Like I think I would guess and I might be right or I might not. A particular whiskey or wine may or may not pair well with the cheese that I picked out or something like that. Actually, that reminds me, the first time I ran a whiskey tasting, I did it for my parents and my best friend
Mm.
and my wife and his wife, and there were 6 people there, and we had 7 or 8 whiskeys. I want to say somewhere deep in my Reddit history, you can probably find a picture of the flight. Um, like if you really wanted to go scrub through my Reddit history, you could probably find it. I probably just need to post it again though, because I never really did a write up. I was just like, yeah, I'm doing this. I'm doing this tasting. Right. One of the things I did for the tasting was I was like, okay, every one of these bottles is like, here's something basic. Here's here's a small batch something. Here's an American single malt. Here's a Scotch. Here's a single barrel. And then like we finished off with a cask strength that actually was like below 50% because it was an older whiskey or something like that.
Mm.
And I wrote like a write up that was like a piece of paper front and back, and I put it on every person's like place setting because this was also like a dinner party.
Mm.
So it was like a dinner party with a whiskey tasting, and the idea was we're gonna do like a 6 course meal and 7 whiskeys. So we're gonna start with whiskey and end with whiskey. And every time we go to another whiskey, we're gonna like learn something about whiskey from what makes that whiskey interesting compared to the others in the lineup. And the feedback, I actually thought it was a great tasting. I thought the notes were good. I felt like people learned a lot. But the feedback that I got immediately from my mom at the end of the tasting was, I appreciate the whiskey tasting, but I wish that he had done food pairings with the whiskey. And I was like, that's really good feedback, and I don't know how to do that. So that's a skill that I want to build. This was years ago, and I still haven't really gotten around to it. There's so much to explore in neat whiskey, not to worry about food pairings.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll roll that into the cheese and whiskey pairing then pretty soon here, because that would be, I mean, the things that pair well with cheese probably are going to pair well with whiskey. nuts, chocolate, honey, fruit, like wonderful things to pair with cheeses. Haven't tried a couple of them with whiskey, most notably nuts. I'd be very interested to see what people think about nuts and whiskey, but can't really try that out myself, I'm afraid. Kind of a weird blind spot in my own tasting history.
Are you allergic to nuts?
Oh, pretty much all of them, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes that a problem.
Yeah. With the notable exception, potentially, of pine nuts, which have yet to try to kill me.
Ah, interesting. I think
It
they are
figures out
somehow different. They're more seeds than nuts, I think is the thing.
that might be it then, yeah. But yeah,
Interesting.
no, there's I mean, like say there's a bunch of whiskeys that I really hate, not because they're bad whiskeys, but because they have a very distinct peanut flavor to them. Not a huge fan of some of Basil Hayden's stuff because it has a sort of distinct nuttiness to it. But gosh, Jim Beam's Devil's Cut is probably my least favorite whiskey because it tastes like it's about to kill me.
Oh yeah, because the peanut note.
Yeah.
So it's not just tree nuts, but also legumes.
Yes, I'm allergic to peanuts and weirdly enough, not allergic to peas in most of their forms, somewhat allergic to pea pods.
Huh.
Yeah, I have no idea.
That's quite odd.
Yeah. It's
I wonder if it's that you have multiple allergies or if there's actually some protein in common or something like that.
so peas are themselves a form of legume, but
Yeah.
I don't really know how close they are to peanuts. I know that for the peanuts, there's a protein in them that is shared among certain tree nuts, but a lot of tree nut allergies is not an allergy specifically to that protein, if I understand this correctly.
I don't know that things need to be related though to have a common allergen. So, for instance,
No.
there are some people who are sensitive to bananas, and they
Mm,
are also sensitive to kiwis. And the reason those
mm.
are not related fruits, although they're both berries technically, but they're not related fruits. They just happen to share a protein that is an allergen to some people or an irritant to some people.
Yeah. It is really interesting. Yeah. Um, haven't done too much experimentation with it, I'll be honest with you, but maybe one day I will.
Yeah, you don't really need to dance with the line of death when it comes to nuts
I
and
do it
things.
enough by accident, quite honestly.
All right, I think I'm gonna put the cheese board back on screen and maybe get both of our faces on screen when we do the sign off. So I've got the Whiskey Lodge in the corner and the Dry Week in the bottom corner, and we can like try to bait a good thumbnail here when we cheers our sign off. Which I think I'm gonna grab my block of brie and use this as a cheers
Oh,
because
there we go.
that just sounds hilarious.
God, wait, do I grab the block of brie that I have as well, or do I try to grab the super gooey burgundy cheese?
Do
Let's
as
do
you
the block
will.
of brie. Let's do the block of brie.
Okay, okay. Well, thank you for educating me about how to put together a cheese board. I'm going to try much harder with doing the appropriate pairings and contrasts. And I hope the audience learned something today as well. And I hope that our future watchers will also learn something. Um, as always, thank you for sharing your expertise, especially when it's about something that is not a common topic that we talk about on the stream. Because honestly, we don't get, dry week once a quarter seems like it comes around quite often. And it also seems like it doesn't come around often enough, especially when we're talking about the things that we can talk about when we are not talking about whiskey. So, cheers to the times that we're not talking about whiskey.
Cheers to the times. There we go.
Sláinte.
Sláinte.